What do you want to talk about? I know exactly what we should talk about. The 2025 Houston Texans season preview. And here with me today to do that is the one and only. He is the co host of Nebraska at the Voice of College Football, the Big Ten Show with Sonny Verma of the Illini Cast, Mr. Justin Adams, here to break it down with me as we go predict key games, talk about the offense and the defense, and we talk about where the Texans shape up within the AFC landscape. Could the Texans be a Super Bowl contender? Stick around and find out. Justin, how are you, my man?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I appreciate you bringing me on. How's your day going?
Pretty good, pretty good. Looking forward to it. I gotta admit, I am a Cowboys fan, so like told you before, this could get a little ugly with the Texans.
I'll be nice.
Cross border rivals, but we'll keep it civil for the people.
Yeah,
But
I'll be
also,
nice. I won't go too hard on you just yet. We'll see.
yeah.
We'll see how many shots you taking me first.
But in all seriousness, though, I do look forward to this. And why don't we jump on into it? And let's start with the Texans and their offense. You know, trading Stephon Diggs away in the offseason, he tore his ACL during the season last year. And a lot of people have questions. What is the Texans offense going to be? They're kind of banged up, and now they're coming in a little more healthier. Nico Collins is coming back. The Texans got a nice little running back tandem. Have they fixed their O-line problems? Justin, what do you expect from this offense for this season?
Yeah, I think the biggest question you asked was, of course, about the offensive line. It's no secret how bad the offensive line was. I think my issue is when people can admit that the offensive line play was terrible, and I'm going to go through some numbers of just how bad it was, but then in the same breath try to say that CJ Slump had a sophomore slump without understanding just how much a bad offensive line, impacts QB play. And a quarterback who is a mainly pocket QB, CJ Stroud scrambled a little bit more, but he wasn't ever just a kind of running quarterback. He's a pass first quarterback, stand in the pocket, and you constantly have him flushed out of the pocket on the move. And just honestly, the Nebraska QB coach Glenn Thomas always says calm feet equal calm mind. And so you have a quarterback that's having to dance around, see ghosts because he's afraid he's going to get pressured on every snap. So just to put in perspective, just first off, how much pressure CJ Stroud was under, we kind of look at the game, the Super Bowl, where Mahomes was under duress that entire game, right? And had I think a minus 1.17 efficiency rating.
Mm-hmm.
And for context, people kind of used that as an excuse for Mahomes. He was pressured on 38% of his dropbacks in that game. CJ Stroud was pressured on 39% of his dropbacks on the season average. Mm-hmm. So he was on average under more duress than Mahomes was in that Super Bowl game. Mind you, that's with Nico Collins being out for 5 games, Stephon Diggs getting hurt, Tank Dell getting hurt, and you were down to your wide receiver 2 and 3 as Xavier Hutchinson and John Mechie. So yeah, you're really not going to probably have a very efficient season or as good as his first season was. Mm-hmm. Now, that kind of stuff is why I expect the bigger jump, and I think not a lot of people are kind of understanding what the Texans kind of did with their offensive line a little bit. But just to go into perspective against Kansas City, Stroud was pressured in that game on 51.4% of the snaps.
Mm-hmm.
And you remember there's a lot of controversy around that game with the calls, and Texans ended up losing by, I think, 2 scores in a close game throughout. He was pressured on over half of those and still finished with more yards, no turnovers, and a positive EPA, which Patrick Mahomes struggled mightily in that game. And CJ was down 2 starting wide receivers. Mm-hmm. So, it just kind of puts everything into perspective when you think of that. That was the last game people saw because he got eliminated off that, but they just don't understand just how abysmally bad it was. So just go through some numbers of the O-line: 27th in pass block win rate, 31st in run block win rate, 3rd most sacks allowed in the season, 5th worst pressure rate, 8 sacks allowed versus Kansas City in that game, 31st in yards before contact per rush. And Kenyon Green is basically a swinging gate, just allowing people into the backfield. So, did you have any questions on that, or should we keep rolling through the offensive line a little bit?
And you can keep going. All I was going to say was, too, even, people want to criticize CJ Stroud, in which he had some bad throws. We can't just blame it all on the offensive line. But I feel like we've seen, like you said, with Patrick Mahomes, when you don't have protection, you've got no time to throw.
Yep.
And I feel like that's where the quarterbacks take a little bit too much of the heat. Me personally, I don't blame CJ as much. I understand if your O-line is bad, it's not all on you, but I just want to put that little comment out there.
100%. Yeah, and that's part of the thing is I feel like each quarterback gets treated differently in that regard. Whereas, again, Texans fans talked about the offensive line, to KC fans about how bad that was, everybody blaming Stroud and stuff like that, or them using that as an excuse and stuff like that. But then they use that as an excuse when they're pressured, 11%, 12% less than that in the quarterback in the Super Bowl. So, yeah, great point. Just everybody kind of gets graded differently on that.
And another thing too is, Justin, I'd like to add, is the receivers weren't getting open either, because if you're not creating separation, it makes it extremely hard to get the ball off quick, because Kansas City was up in the receivers' faces all night long.
Yep.
They were a great example. So it was kind of, everyone deserved a piece of the blame pie.
100%. Yeah, because
you could really do that with anybody.
Yeah, having 2 wide receivers out and you down 2 receivers that literally had no ability at any point last season to create separation, and they have not proven. Xavier Hutchinson and John Mechie have not proven the ability to be able to create separation. So you had CJ Stroud having Nico Collins out 5 weeks, and then when he is there, he's just the only person that he can really look to, and so it's easy to kind of clamp that down. So, and then looking at kind of the offensive line, I kind of got a projection that I did a little bit earlier this offseason. So you got at left tackle, there is Cam Robinson, a veteran presence there. Ariante Irsay, who's going to kind of be there for depth and probably is going to, be, a player early on in this, with this offensive line, because I think there's going to be a lot of movement, a lot of rotation. You have Laken Thompson there at left guard, so a little bit more experience. Jared Patterson at center. I feel fine about that. Titus Howard, now you got at guard. You got Trent Brown over at right tackle. And kind of the biggest thing is, they got rid, of course, Laramie Tunsil, but a lot of people questioned why that is. But they're really trying to look to retool this offensive line, and they talked about being less finesse and having more of a mean streak, So last year, they were just getting blown off the ball, and that's why they were 31st in the league in contact behind the line of scrimmage in the run game. They were just getting blown off the line. So they're now trying to play with more of this downhill, aggressive, philosophy. And Nick Caserio kind of alluded to that in the little press conference he did. Caserio sees Titus as a legitimate kind of long-term guard for the team. And I think he could be very good there. It's not like a temporary fix he sees. Robinson, Brown, Fisher, and Ursary, they can move. They have that flexibility, because that's what he was talking about that he really wants, is those guys to be able to move around with a gap scheme, offense built on kind of like getting downhill and not getting wide, not, trying to add lateral. It's one of those things, instead of lateral stress, wide zone, stuff like that. You want to be able to get downhill quick. And that's where they were talking about less finesse and kind of more, aggressive off the ball, and kind of have that fire and that mean streak that they really want. So Cole Popovich, he says they want to protect CJ, punish people in the run game, and finish drives. And that's what they didn't do last year. It's just finish.
And it's so refreshing to hear that too, because people think the past is what's going to win you a Super Bowl. And it still is to a certain extent. But you look at the Eagles, what was the main thing that carried them all the way there? It was Saquon in that dominant running game, because it sets up the pass. And so it's so refreshing when I hear a team like the Texans, who I could see Super Bowl potential in. They've got everything there to do it. and for their coaches to say, we want to be a run team first. We want to punish you and punch you in the mouth. I like it. That's my
Yeah,
kind of football.
absolutely. Yeah, smash mouth. And I never, you know, I always agree that balance is the best thing you can have. You know, don't be too pass heavy, don't be too run heavy. Try to be that balanced team, and that's kind of what the path they're going now. So, and so I
Mm-hmm.
like that part of it. And then you know, the wide receiver room last year, again, I just talked about the injuries to that. But you go in, and of course, Nico Collins is back healthy. Nico was the league leader in yards through 5 weeks of the season last year. So when he went out with that hamstring injury, he had 567 yards. And he actually led the league through week 6. He was even out week 6, left early week 5, and he still led the league in receiving yards through week 6 into week 7. So then he missed, you know, was supposed to miss 4 games, but I think they held him out a 5th just because it's a precautionary hamstring, soft tissue injuries. Those are hard to come back from and not re-aggravate. So you want to be very careful. But came back from the IR, finished with 1,006 yards, 7 touchdowns, and got paid and deserved, you know, every bit of what he got paid.
And CJ Stroud and Nico seem to have a great connection on the football field and off the field. Like, he is what I prefer to him as his Julian Edelman. Like Tom Brady had a Julian Edelman, I could see that being Nico and CJ, kind of being the Julian Tom Brady kind of comparison, where when
Yeah.
you need a first down or when you need a score and it's close, CJ always seems to find Nico. I kind of get that vibe about it. I don't know if
Yeah.
I'm far off in that or if you disagree, but that's what I kind of get from it.
I think any quarterback would. Nico is a top 5 NFL wide receiver. He is without a doubt. You look at the numbers, you look at the analytics, and the fact that he missed 5 games and still had over 1,000 yards receiving and was the league leader in yards through week 6 while being out game 5. And that is with all of the negative stats of the offensive line and CJ Stroud having a down season. Yeah, there's a lot of things there that indicate that he is at minimum a top 5 wide receiver in the league. So yeah,
I wouldn't argue that because
yeah,
he's really good. There were some plays that he just creates separation, and you just wonder how he does it sometimes. There was a game against the Colts where he split double coverage and was wide open,
mhm.
and I still don't know how he was able to do that. Like,
He
it's
has
incredible, his mind for that.
100%. He is a perfect blend. You know, he's what you look for in a superstar wide receiver. Perfect blend of route running. He's got size. He's 6'4". He's big. He's strong. He can go up and high point a ball. His hands are incredible. I can't recall off the top of my head his drop rate, but it's very, very low. He is without a doubt a matchup nightmare. You cannot cover him. It's one of those things, and that's why when the Texans have extra wide receivers to throw to, Nico, that allows him to get open. However, with the receiver core being the way it was last year, you know, and him being a little bit more, they could focus on him specifically. That then allowed them to kind of put that focus on him, but he still ended up with over 1,000, you know, yards, which is, I just don't think there's anything there that you can argue against him being top 5 without a doubt.
Mm-hmm. And another thing I want to touch on with this offense before we talk about the defense is I want to see how the Texans' run game bounces back.
Yeah.
Damian Pierce and company, I think he was a big vocal point in CJ's first year where they had nice success, and it seemed to help get his confidence. This past year, it seemed to deteriorate over time. Like, teams began to figure it out, and it just seemed like a lot of it had to do with the O-line, I'm sure, not being healthy and not blocking like they should, but it seemed like the Texans play their best when they run the football. I don't think that's a secret to anybody that watches them. But it just seemed like as time went on, the run game just got farther and farther away. How did the Texans make sure that doesn't happen again and they don't put it all on just CJ Stroud?
Yeah, you know, I think a couple of additions in the wide receiver core that are really going to help this running game too, because then, of course, Tank Dell. You look at Tank Dell last year. That knee injury is something that he still may never come back from, and the reason being is because he didn't just dislocate his kneecap like it was originally reported. He dislocated his entire knee. And the closest
Oh,
injury to that in NFL history, in recent memory, is RG3. And RG3 didn't tear every single ligament in his knee. Not only did Tank's knee completely dislocate, it tore every ligament in the knee. Okay. And this is coming
wow.
off a season prior where he broke his leg, which potentially was the reason that that kind of leg was a little bit more unstable. On top of the way he got hit was brutal. Um, RG3 was never the same after his injury. And
Mhm,
Tank Dell has, he's already at a disadvantage with his size,
mhm,
And one of the biggest things, I'm about to be a pro boxer later this year, and my right bicep, I ruptured that twice, back to back years. One of the biggest things, even when it was fully recovered, is mentally, you know, getting the confidence to throw that, so him getting the confidence to plant and cut on that leg, and getting the confidence to take, hits on that leg and just getting that he's not going to be
yes.
back this year. Under any circumstance, do I think he'll be back this year? He may not be back next year. Um,
Mhm,
it's one of those things
and what
that they have to take their time with that.
mhm.
Go ahead. What are you
I
gonna
was
say?
just gonna add to that, not to cut you off, I was just gonna add,
Yeah.
which sucks for a young player like Tank Dell. I thought he had really, really good superstar potential,
Yep.
and it sucks that that happened, but do you think the Texans might end up cutting him if he is not playable anymore? Would be my question.
I think they're going to see this rehab through and let him get an opportunity to get back on the field, if
That's
he
good.
100% can. But they're definitely going to keep him and make sure he rehabs and stuff like that. And one of the things he does have on his side is youth. He's very, very young, so his body can come back from this stuff, and he's
Mhm,
locked in on his recovery. Like he's saying he's going to be back. He's saying he's going to be back sooner than people think. So, I hope I'm wrong in that and he comes back sooner rather than later, but I definitely do not think it'll be this season at all.
mhm,
One of the more underrated signings, Christian Kirk, Texans
mhm,
went out and signed Christian Kirk, and you got a possession receiver right there that you can throw in the
mhm,
slot. One of the best route runners there is. And we saw even with Calvin Ridley coming over Jacksonville, everybody thought Calvin Ridley was going to take that offense over. Christian Kirk was the guy still in that offense. He was the
mhm,
guy getting open. You can play him inside or outside, and he's going to help keep the defenses honest and really help us out in that kind of middle range, setting up Nico. And then we go over to, this year's draft was very, very heavy early draft capital at the wide receiver position. So
mhm,
Jaden Higgins out of Iowa State and Jalen Noel out of Iowa State. So they went and got two teammates in back-to-back rounds. And
mhm,
Jaden Higgins is already looking like the clear-cut number 2 wide receiver out of the reports out of camp. So Jaden Higgins, a rookie coming in, another big body kid. He's got the size and the ability, kind of a small, at a lesser extent of kind of Nico. So he's really going to help open that offense up on the other side, on the outside. And then Jalen Noel, another slick
mhm,
slot guy that you can throw in there, kind of get him, he's quick. And so he adds another element in there with Christian Kirk. And so they're going to earn their snaps this year. They're going to get early playing time. And I really think, Higgins is going to be that wide receiver too. So this is a deeper wide receiver room because they just weren't really bought in on Xavier Hutchinson and Mechie
mhm,
as backup plans at all.
mhm. And thing too is with Mechie, when the Texans originally drafted him, he had tore his ACL, which he was
Mhm.
already coming off an injury. So that's
Yes.
already
Yeah,
a
he
big
had cancer his rookie season. Yeah, he got diagnosed with cancer after the Texans drafted him. So he missed a year before that. Yeah. So it's been a
so
rough, and before that he was injured. Yeah. So it's been a rough little go for him for sure.
mhm, and normally when you come into it already injured, you've already got the self-doubts in your head.
Yeah.
And he was really good at Alabama. I liked him. I thought he could have
Yeah.
been a really good NFL receiver. It's just he's not been healthy, and you know, and of course the cancer, which God bless him. Hopefully,
Unfortunately.
like
Yeah.
he gets over that. But he just never has really gotten a chance to really show what he was,
Yeah.
and it's forced the Texans to kind of be like make a move because they think their Super Bowl window is now. Like
Exactly.
it's
Rookie
I mean,
quarterback contract. You got to take advantage of that rookie quarterback contract before you end up, paying a lot of your salary cap to them. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then that kind of just going to really help the running back room as well, because that reliance and that inability to really kind of rely on those guys. We had to rely on the run game so much. And, Mixon's a veteran. He was perfect fit in this offense. I haven't seen him be. Joe Mixon was where efficiency went to die before this. Now, he put up a lot of good numbers, but in that Bengals offense, he was not very efficient. He
Mm-hmm.
averaged like 3 point something yards per carry, really, and ended up running the back of his lineman. I think the way this offense, was designed last year was a perfect fit for Mixon. We saw him kind of break out, 1,000+ yards, 11 touchdowns. But he wore down as the season went along because he's a little bit older, and you can't it's not normal to have, a guy of his age just constantly be the workhorse and be beat on. So then they go out and get Nick Chubb, and Nick Chubb's 28 years old. People forget that.
Mm-hmm.
And, when healthy, he was the most efficient running back
Mm-hmm.
in the NFL. Like, if you look at his yards after contact number, he led the NFL in that in most seasons. He was a nightmare to bring down. He wasn't huge in fantasy because he was a big in fantasy, and that's as primarily a running back that doesn't have all the the receiving extras, and so that combination right there is going to be huge. And neither one of those are going to have to carry the load. And that with a couple guys coming off injury is really going to help keep them healthy.
Mm-hmm. And I think too with the Texans is we talk about a lot about their offense. What I want to talk about next is the defense, because D'Amico Ryans, this is what he was brought to Houston to do, in my opinion, was build a defense.
Yeah.
He played defense for the Texans, drafting Will Anderson, C.J. Stroud back to back, and the Texans defense, they're no strangers to having all great time players in J.J. Watt, of course, Hall of Famer, maybe the greatest Texan ever. And I don't think I'm out of line for saying that. But if you look at that wild card game against the Chargers, that defense had a field day. And we're not even tapping the potential, I don't think, Justin, of what this defense can be under D'Amico Ryans. They're young, they're hungry. Derek Singleton Jr. out of LSU, I really like what he brings to the team. Talk about this defense a little bit, Justin. Could this be a top 5 defense going into this year?
This is already a top 5, defense going into this year, and in my opinion, will probably be the top defense in the league this year.
Okay.
If under these circumstances, and I'm going to go through it, but the reason why I feel this Texans defense is that good is they had to, first off, just looking at a big picture with the offense as bad as they were at times, their defense, their back was against the wall in a lot of cases. And that defense did nothing but stand up. They, just to kind of run down some of my notes on them, that over the course of this offseason, they've talked about this kill zone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what that zone is they call it that 5, to 15-yard range. And they're trying to force you into that range so they can take your head off over the middle. Like, they are coming for you. They play downhill. They play aggressive. And a lot of players were out last season for multiple things. And I'll go through that in just a second. So you look at the pass rush. Of course, you got Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter coming back. 2 of the best pass rushers in the league. Both of those probably top 5 pass rushers in the league. And you had Will Anderson missing a lot of games. And with a high ankle sprain, he still finished with 10 sacks, 17 quarterback hits, tackles for loss in 10 of his 13 games. And he's just a complete game wrecker. And then you have Danielle Hunter off the other side, who is probably the best pass rusher in the league, if not, top 3. 16 and a half sacks, 23 TFLs, 22 QB hits. You can't double both those guys. And that duo is going to set up the defensive backfield, which the defensive backfield last year, a lot of people don't understand the impact of the 2 rookies that we had. And I'll start with Derek Stingley first, because he is, of course, the biggest key piece of that defense. He is now the highest paid cornerback in the league, and he earned that. You know, he had
Rightfully so.
5 interceptions. You know, all pro. He was kind of that level lockdown like Revis Island, that pass breakup that he had, or the interception that he had taken it from Tyreek in that Dolphins game at the very end of the game. You know, the couple interceptions he had in that game, and one of the things that I like about Stingley, he's worked ball skills since he was 6 years old, and you can see him bait quarterbacks into throws. There was this one where he was standing about probably like 10 yards away from the receiver and
Mhm.
kind of baited that throw. And as soon as he saw the quarterback release, he started working his way over it, undercut it. And, you know, the injury the last season of LSU coming into the league, you know, he had a slow start, but he
Mhm.
really has that locked down now. And on the other side, the rookie, Kamari Lassiter,
Mhm.
a lot of people did not realize just how good he was. He had 11 games, 47 tackles, 8 passes defended, 3 interceptions. So PFF, I got a PFF number here. His coverage grade, he held QBs to a 45.6 completion percentage when targeted. This is a rookie. 4 passes deflected, interception in the playoffs, allowed 0 catches in the divisional round. So he got
Mhm.
better as the season went along,
Mhm.
and Stingley has referred to him as a dog. Like he's just a rough, tough nose player, and that's the epitome of this defense. So that duo is going to be crazy. And I'll jump into the safeties. Do you have any comments on that, on the cornerback room or the D line?
I will say this with the Texans, like Daniil Hunter in Minnesota, fantastic. And when he was originally brought in from the Texans, I know a lot of it was for Minnesota was having cap issues, and I even thought I was like, this is a good pickup for the Texans. They need
Oh,
someone to be able to rush the passer. You know, JJ Watt, I think, they had traded him away to I think Arizona when he was brought in before he retired, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. And then of course drafting Will Anderson. So they got their pass rush and Will Anderson being a good middle linebacker that could stop the run too.
mhm,
That's a good run stopper. And then Derek Stingley Jr. I mean, dude's a stud. I mean, he's going to be in this league for a long time, I think. And like you
100%.
said, him getting paid rightfully so. Give him a house if you need to. Like keep him in Houston as long as you can.
Yep.
I mean, because he will take your best receiver one on one, and he will stop him essentially almost a lot of
Yep.
times. Like you said, the Tyreek Hill play. I mean, not many people can keep up with Tyreek Hill like that, but he can. But the Texans, they're looking pretty good on both sides of that side of the ball.
Yep. And then, running into the safeties,
Mhm.
again, a lot of these injuries we had over the course of the season, the safeties, Jalen Petrie was out with a pec tear.
Mhm.
He missed a lot of games and missed the playoffs. So, and Jalen Petrie's kind of that mean dog, that nickel kind of downhill style player. Like he is the hard hitter. He had 147 tackles the year before, and he just kind of brings that tenacity. Good balance there. And he was actually he was developed by Nebraska's coach Matt Rule. I'm a Husker fan, so I always remember that part of it too. So just an excellent, safety room. And then you have how am I drawing a blank on his name? Oh my gosh. Our other safety, Kalen Bullock. Sorry, another rookie. And Kalen
Mhm.
Bullock, I think I had some numbers here for Kalen Bullock. Let me
Mhm.
see if I got him right here. So, because
In
he
which
had, I think, 5 interceptions last season, and CJ. So we had CJ Garner Johnson. Kalen Bullock, 5 interceptions last year
Mhm.
at the strong safety position. So that's 2 rookies right there that are going to improve year over year. Then adding
Mhm.
CJ Garner Johnson, that the rookie there, and I had a PFF kind of thing I bookmark on X that kind of put this into perspective how good this Texans you know secondary is going to be. You have Derek Stingley, who was the number 5 cornerback according to PFF. You have Kamari Lassiter, the number 31 cornerback according to PFF. CJ Garner Johnson you bring in, so he was the number 13 safety. Jimmy Ward was just got arrested, so we'll see about that. number 19 safety. Jalen Petrie you had as the number 21 safety in the league. And then Kalen Bullock is really probably going to be the starting safety. He's without a doubt going to be the starting safety over CJ Gardner-Johnson and Jimmy Ward anyways. That's just how good he actually was. So that puts in perspective just, the level that this secondary is going to be next season. And that mean streak they bring, like all of those guys just play with that downhill tenacity.
Mm-hmm. And I think a thing too is on this defense, before we get into talking about the Texans' schedule, kind of looking at the key games where we think Texans could win, could lose. I think with the defense, I think it's safe to say, and this isn't no slight, I think the Texans' defense is going to outperform the offense. And I know it's crazy to say, but
it's
when you break it down,
I don't think that's any secret.
Number by number, I think the Texas defense, they're stingy, they're ball hawking. I think they'll win a lot of games for this. But
and that's not even the additions of the linebackers. I mean, you got Azeez Al-Shaair, 70 tackles. He hits hard, plays hard. He was suspended because of that Trevor Lawrence thing, that Trevor Lawrence hit, which to me was a bang bang play. And the fact, but he, maybe he put his arm, into his chest, and that's what caused him. But I think it was the fact that, and by all means, penalize him for that, right? Because it was the excessiveness. But that's penalized every single time. But just because, Trevor Lawrence got knocked unconscious, that just made it was because of what happened because of it that turned it into a suspension. And it was a late slide by Trevor Lawrence. I admit the same thing about Dylan Raiola in the bowl game. Like he slid late and it helped us because it got us a penalty. I'll agree that was a late slide, and it was the same exact play that Trevor Lawrence had. It was bang bang. So I think he was wrongfully suspended for that.
And see, and not to go down that rabbit hole, but I'm one of those. If a quarterback starts to slide, you got to be able to give the defense, because not a lot of people know this if you don't play sports, but your momentum carries you sometimes. You can't always stop and put your foot in the ground, or if you play basketball, stop and catch yourself.
He was already starting to launch. He was already starting to go for the tackle, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, like what he did, yes, I'm with you. Penalizing, yes, there shouldn't be no room for that in our game.
Yeah, for the forearm. For the forearm part, he did, but it went into his chest, and that was the part that they blew out of proportion too. Sure.
But it's hard to stop your momentum like that. Anybody that's played sports knows what we're talking about, 100%. Because like you'd have to watch it on film. Like it's just hard to be like, okay, I see he's sliding, let me hold my momentum, because you're going full speed. You're trying to catch the quarterback.
Yes.
And it's just very, very hard. But
100%.
Let's talk about the Texans season, shall we?
Let's do it.
Where we think they will end up in the landscape of the AFC. Some people think they'll be good enough to win their division again and win a playoff game, and that's their ceiling. Some think the Texans could be a dark horse to win the Super Bowl. We're going to talk about that. And starting off week 1 at the LA Rams at 4:25 on CBS. And it's a key game to start, and kind of give my reason why. The Rams start the season slow a lot, Justin, as we all know. And the Sean McVay company don't start playing really good football until later in the year, coming down the stretch. That's when Stafford and McVay start to put it together. So this is a chance for the Texas team to get a win in LA to start the year. This is a very good chance. But by this point, what are the Texans going to be like? Are they going to be – because they've got some new pieces coming as well, like you mentioned. How's the O-line going to look against a very ferocious Rams D-line? I mean, what do you think about this game, Justin?
This one's going to be tough. Mainly, it's the first game with Nick Haley as the offensive coordinator. So the offense is going to take a little time to kind of gel here. So and the Rams are a good team. They're a very good team. So it's hard to come out and, a new retooled O-line and a lot of new offensive pieces, 2 rookies and stuff like that, and come out and beat kind of a pretty good playoff team, playoff caliber team in the Rams. So I'll come out and just say early on, it's good. Just it's a kind of a game where they're kind of getting a rhythm and figuring things out. There may be growing pains, so I'm going to take Los Angeles to win that one.
Week 2 doesn't get any easier, but you're coming back home though. You've got Tampa at home on Monday night at 7 p.m. I mean, Tampa has revitalized themselves. Ever since the Super Bowl win with Tom Brady. Anything's going to be a downgrade for Tom Brady. Let's not kid ourselves. But
Yes.
Baker Mayfield has found his home. I think Mike Evans, on the little older side, but he's still performing at such a high level. Chris Godwin coming back off an ACL.
Sorry if you hear my dog. Sorry if you hear my dog barking in the back. Apologize for that. I hope it's not too loud.
It's all good. It's all good.
Okay, perfect.
It's all good. Chris Godwin come back from ACL tear, so Tampa kind of like Houston, getting healthy again. I mean, I could see this game going one or two ways. This is kind of a coin flip game. What say you, Justin?
So the Texans, the way they play at home is absurd. Just that defense that they play with that fire, like I talked about, that really, really stands out on those home games because they are fired up. They fire the crowd up. They interact with the crowd a lot. The big hitting, downhill style. I think Tampa's going to struggle in that game. I do. I think the defense will set the tone. I think that'll give the offense an opportunity to kind of get, a little bit more in the flow of that offense coming off of that first week against Los Angeles, kind of working out some of the kinks. But yeah, I think the defense is just going to be the difference in this one, and they're gonna overpower Tampa to a level they won't be able to really kind of handle.
Mm-hmm. Weeks 3 and 4, 2 divisional games at Jacksonville versus Tennessee. 1 p.m. both on CBS. I mean, these are interesting games. Division games across the board for anybody is coin flips for me because each team plays different in their division. I mean, Texans, have had their struggles in Jacksonville. It's no secret, I don't think, to anybody. A lot of the division has struggled in Jacksonville. Whatever it is about Duval County, teams do not play that well there. But do you think the Texans can they go to Jacksonville and get this win, Justin?
Well, Jacksonville and Tennessee are the two teams that I have projected third and fourth in my, I think the Colts are the second best team in the division in the AFC South. So coming into Jacksonville, I don't know, we keep saying Trevor Lawrence this year is going to be the year that we see what Trevor Lawrence was supposed to be. And it doesn't seem like he's getting any better. He seems to be regressing at times, and I'm not sure why that is, but the Jacksonville Jaguars have just kind of not taken any step they were expected to take. They had promised the last couple years coming into the season, and last year they were supposed to be a pretty good team, and they were terrible. The O-line, struggled. They still really haven't fixed that. Their wide receiver core is just not very good. They lose Christian Kirk. They're average at best. And the defense was just all over the place last season. So, they may just a divisional game play the Texans tough. But the Texans, I cannot remember how many times we've beaten Jaguars in a row, but they haven't beaten us, or unless they beat us once in there. But we have a long streak of beating Jacksonville, and we kind of have owned Jacksonville in recent years, and it hasn't been remotely close.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, with it being at Jacksonville, I think there could be a little struggle, like you said, but I do think the Texans win this game. Then next week you got Tennessee at home. I think Tennessee, they're still a couple years away. I think they're growing. Rookie quarterback. I think Cam Ward, he's going to find his footing. But I just think against a defense like Houston, I think this is going to be an ugly, ugly, ugly game for this Tennessee team. What's that, Justin?
Yeah, they're just kind of in this weird spot. You got your quarterback, right? But of course, naturally with, a quarterback that plays in the way Cam Ward does, it is that's going to lend to a lot of mistakes, because he does play sometimes this kind of backyard style football where he runs around, rolls around the pocket and tries to make a flashy play. And It doesn't really work that well in the NFL. These guys are disciplined, way more disciplined than they are in college. But the thing is, he has the arm talent to be an exceptional quarterback at times. Like he has the
Yes.
ability to be, so he's going to have great moments where you see, Cam Ward, what he will be in the near future. But then you're going to have those boneheaded plays naturally that you're going to be like, what was he
Mhm.
thinking? But he'll learn from those. He'll learn from those, and that's what's going to make him better. So I definitely think catching them, early in the season, week 4, week 4 is going to be a good time to play them, at least so that way it's not really middle of the season and then kind of late in the season. So we get in week 4, week 11. Week 11, I expect that game to be a little tougher, but I still think Tennessee is going to have so many growing pains this season. No Derrick Henry, of course. Their offensive line isn't very good. Defense, again, they're just super inconsistent as well. So they got the quarterback, but the Texans are kind of a balanced, well-built, complete team that is ready to compete now. And so I
Mhm.
think Houston wins that one as well. So I got them at 3-1
Mhm.
thus far.
I do too. I have them at 3-1 as well. And week 5, Sunday, October 5th, at the Baltimore Ravens, 1 p.m. on CBS. And this is when we talk about what do the Texans want to be? What are they going to be in the landscape in the big scheme of things? And this is a great meter test in Baltimore. We're going to find out, are the Texans are as good as we think they are, or are they still middle of the pack? What do you think, Justin?
I think, like you said, this is going to be a good gauge. I don't think this is going to tell the final story, but in my opinion, Baltimore and playing in Baltimore is probably the toughest game that we've faced. When we played them last season and they put it on us, albeit we had 11 games in or 3 games in 11 days, and Kansas came off of playing Kansas City the week prior and we all beat up, but still they put it to us. And, Baltimore
Mm-hmm.
has been a team we struggle with in recent years. And so I think the healthy defense will definitely make this much closer of a game. I think this will stay within, 14 points for sure, probably within 10 points but Baltimore's defense, you talk about the Texans feeding off the defense, feeding off the crowd. The Baltimore Ravens feed off the crowd more than anybody. It's a very difficult place to play. Lamar is just, I can't say enough good things about Lamar. He gets a bad rap, but Lamar Jackson's incredible. And he is a hard quarterback to play against and stop. He is a top quarterback in this league. I don't care what anybody says. He is in the conversation as the best quarterback in this league, in my opinion. I don't care about playoff performances, record. Just throw all that out. I'm talking pure ability. That team is balanced offensively. They have an elite defense. That team's going to be hard to beat. That's a loss.
I agree. I've got Texans at 3-2 as well. And you giving my guy Lamar Jackson all the praise makes me proud as a Louisville fan. Makes me proud.
I
I love
actually, I have a Facebook post that I screenshotted. It's still on my Facebook, and it was the night he got drafted 31st. And I said the Ravens just got the biggest steal in draft history. I said Lamar
Uh-huh.
Jackson's going to be unreal, and lo and behold, he was. I knew. I was like, I have no idea what people were thinking. That the whole hype of like, oh, running back. You did not watch that guy throw the ball at Louisville. I'm sorry. Anybody who said that did not watch him throw the ball. He did more than
Mhm.
just run around. Like, he's accurate. He puts some zip on that ball. It's a tight spiral every single time. He changes angles better than Patrick Mahomes, in my opinion. And he's hard to bring down. Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah. So you shouting out Lamar makes my heart full as a Louisville
Let's
fan.
go.
But week 6 though, a bye week, early bye week. I mean,
Mm,
some people like an early bye, some prefer later, but this comes in handy because week 7, Monday,
yes.
October 20th, at the Seattle Seahawks, 10 p.m., ESPN Plus. So you got 2 weeks to prepare to go to Seattle, which
Yeah.
works out because Seattle is a tough road environment to play, no matter who's the coach, who's on the team. This is not a giving game to any team on their schedule. And as good as the Texans are on defense, it's not a given. What do you think,
Mhm.
Justin?
I think like I said, I would prefer a bye week a little later in the season, but I think it comes, like you said, at a really good time. because that stretch right after Seattle, San Francisco, Denver, those are tough teams. Denver's a tough team. I wouldn't put Seattle's a tough place to play, and they can be tough at times. But I think, with that, like I said, those growing pains on offense, you play that first little part of the schedule, and then you kind of regroup and can kind of get in the room and film room and look over that offense and fine tune some things. And so I think they'll be fresh coming off of that, going into Seattle. Seattle was very inconsistent last year too. I think the Texans are the better team and should win that game. So they should be 4-2 coming out of Seattle.
So I have a loss in this game. I got the Texans at 3-3. I think for me, going to Seattle is not an easy thing to do. And I feel like a team like the Texans, I feel like they're still young, and I feel like they could get a little mentally rattled or could be feeling themselves, especially if they win the Ravens game. I think they lose this game, but I don't think there's no shame in losing this game because Seattle, I think, is, like I said, is a tough place to play, and they always seem to have a really good, sound, fundamental team.
Yeah, they do feed off that crowd. So, that could be a game that they play exceptionally well, and pull that upset there for sure.
Week 8, Sunday, October 26th, 1 p.m. on Fox versus the San Francisco 49ers. And San Francisco, my goodness, this was a team a couple years ago we were talking about possibly beating the Chiefs in the Super Bowl and maybe going back to back. Boy, how the mighty have fallen, Justin. I mean, Deebo Samuel's in Washington. George Kittle's getting a little older. Brandon Ayuk coming off an ACL tear. Their defense is not what it once was either. The Texans catching them at the right time, maybe? What say you?
Yeah, with the 49ers, the biggest thing you got to stop. But my thing with the 49ers is this. I really think Purdy struggles when he has, is under duress, people in his face, putting big hits on him. And the Texans were one of the best teams at stopping the run last year. So if they go in there and they set the tone and really get after him, I think that's going to be a really tough game for them. And I think the Texans will pull that one out pretty easy.
I agree. I've got the Texans at 4-3 as well, like you, Justin. I think, like you said, this is going to be a tough game for the 49ers. I think they're going to have another rough year. I think the Super Bowl window, I don't think it's closed, but I definitely think it's beginning to shut. And I think the Texans take advantage of that.
100%.
But week 9, Sunday, November 2nd, versus the Denver Broncos, 1 p.m. on Fox. And all of a sudden, the Broncos have life again. Sean Payton, Bo Nix coming to town. And all of a sudden, the Broncos have found their coach, have found their quarterback of the future, found their offense, their defense to find everything's starting to come together in Denver after so long of trying to find something. They finally found their formula, but it's going to be a great matchup. 2 young quarterbacks, 2 young teams throwing down in H-Town, early afternoon on Fox. I cannot wait. Justin, what do you think?
I think the biggest game changer in this one is the fact that Houston gets them at home. Broncos are a very balanced team. I do think CJ Stroud right now is definitely ahead of where Nix is as a quarterback for sure. But that defense is tough. So he's going to have to be on his game. This offense is going to have to be clicking. And the defense, is going to have to be able to try to outplay the Broncos defense. And both of those defenses are going to be top defenses in the league. Broncos secondary is insanely good as well. So I think that's going to be a really, really close game. I give the edge to the Texans because it's a home game.
I do too. I've got the Texans winning and going to 5-3. I think, like you said, I think CJ Stroud being a little more experienced, more big time game pressure than Bo Nix. I feel like they'll pull it out and get this W. But
for sure,
week 10, Sunday, November 9th versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, 1 p.m. on CBS. So you got a couple home games coming in here. But Jacksonville coming to Houston, by no means is this going to be an easy game. I mean, it is a division game, but I do think the Texans do pull it out at home, like you said. The Texans are a fantastic home team. I have them at 6-3. What say you, Justin?
Yeah, Jaguars, I can't predict a loss against them. I just don't see any way they beat us, especially at home. So yeah, I think Texans will make quick work of Jacksonville in that one. So yeah, they win that game.
Mm-hmm. Week 11, Sunday, November 16th, the Tennessee Titans, 1 p.m. on Fox. And this could be a trap game in Nashville because of what's coming up next at home versus Buffalo, which we'll get to that. But this is a game, if it wasn't sandwiched after Buffalo, I could see the Texans would probably run away with this game. But the fact that it's in Nashville and it's a week before Buffalo, I could see this getting a little slippery slow. But I do think the Texans eke it out by like a field goal or 2 points. I got the Texans at 7-3. What say you, Justin?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's going to be one of those instances where they come in a little bit better offensively. I think Cam
Mm-hmm.
Ward settles down a little bit more in that Week 11 game, but I still think a rookie quarterback against this defense is going to be extremely tough. Like I think this defense is championship caliber. Cam Ward is probably another year away from dealing with a championship caliber defense and be able to come in there and win with that kind of offense that's around him. Not a lot of great stuff on that offense around him, and that defense, again, inconsistent. Tennessee doesn't really turn out a great crowd all the time. They might this year because of Cam Ward, but Tennessee, you don't really ever see them kind of change the outcome of a game. So yeah, I think the Texans pull this one out.
I do too. Like I said, 7-3. But week 12, Thursday, November 20th, versus the Buffalo Bills, 8:15 on Amazon Prime Video. Short week against the reigning MVP and what many people predict that could be the team that goes to the Super Bowl out the AFC at home versus Buffalo. And this was a game last year that the Texans won. So that definitely, I think, is on Buffalo's mind coming into this year. Um, I think Josh Allen could win MVP again, but I think the Texans, Justin, this is another one of the benchmark games, especially coming down the stretch with the reigning AFC champs, Kansas City, coming up on the way. How do you see this game going?
Yeah, and just to put this game into perspective, last year, the Texans played the Bills, I think week 5 this past season, and in that game,
Mm-hmm.
they were up 20-3 in the third quarter
Yes.
with about 11 minutes to go, right? So dominating that game, and then they just kind of rolled over and died. I believe it's the game Nico got hurt in as well. But
Mm-hmm.
you had a little bit of a run there where they came back and they scored a touchdown with 8:48 left. Scored a touchdown with 4 minutes and 20 seconds left because of a deep pass that honestly the Texans should have been there to get that ball, but Keon Coleman catches it deep. So a long, quick touchdown there to score, and then Bass came in and kicks a 33-yard field goal with 3:18 left. Again, the defense is just trying to stifle them as much as they can, but you kind of have these big explosive plays that a couple of those plays that kind of that get them back in the game. And so people talk about kind of that ending sequence and like, oh, controversial and all this other stuff. Like, I don't think people realize the things that also happen to Texans on the other end, and I won't dive into it too much. But if you just look at the overall play, Josh Allen was 9 for 30 in that game. 9 for 30, 131 yards, 4.4 per pass, 56.4 QBR, in one sack for -5 yards. So. And then there was a tweet I found that I bookmarked as well about that performance. And Josh Allen, his 30% completion percentage was the lowest completion percentage in a single game in over 30 years for a quarterback with 30-plus attempts.
Mm-hmm.
And So like with that game again, but here's my contingent on that. Buffalo got a lot better as the season went along. And
Yes.
that team, Houston's championship caliber, Buffalo is championship, potential favorite. They're that level. So I say all that to
Mm-hmm.
say I still think it's a tough game against Buffalo. Josh Allen is probably my favorite quarterback in the league. I think Buffalo wins this game.
So I have the Texans winning this game and going to 8-3. I
I
have the
like it.
reverse of you.
I like it.
And thing is, too, the Texans at home are something special, like you
Yes.
said. And I think Buffalo, like you said, are the potential favorites to win the whole thing, as they should be. But I feel like this is one of them games where the Texans, where we have one of those crazy, crazy games and they find a way to win it. Where this is going to be one of them, in my opinion. It's whoever has the ball last wins. And I think
That
it's
was
going to be
last year's.
Stroud.
Yeah.
And it's going to be Stroud and company, in my opinion. And I think they go down and win a field goal again, and thus announce their presence. But how will they follow it up? That's to be determined. Week 13, Sunday, November 30th, at the Indianapolis Colts, 1 p.m. on CBS. And going to Indy is not an easy thing, as you well know, Justin.
Yeah.
The Colts, what's Anthony Richards, once again, he's laboring another injury. Can he stay healthy by this time, or is Daniel Jones going to be the guy? I like the Colts roster. I really do. But it's just they can't find the quarterback. And I think that's what's hurting them. Michael Pittman Jr., I think he's a stud at receiver. I like him. I wish he was in a better situation with a quarterback and used his potential. But here we are. Colts
Mhm.
always have a great defense, and they play good at home. But coming off a big win like that, I could see this for a letdown as well. But what say you, Justin?
Yeah, I mean the Colts. Anthony Richardson has shown that he's not the answer, and I ran a fantasy football channel during his QB draft class with Will Levis, C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, and Richardson, and I had C.J. Stroud ranked first. I had Bryce second, Levis third, and
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Richardson in a tie for third because I could not decide which one I thought was going to be worse. I thought Will
Mm-hmm.
Levis was overall a worse quarterback in terms of like how if he was to play consistently, he would be that would be the only thing that would make him better than Richardson because Richardson had been so bad and so up and down in college. He had a 50-something% completion percentage of college. He only started 9 games at Florida,
Mm-hmm.
right? And everybody
Mm-hmm.
was talking about, and they just fell in love with his athleticism. But the guy cannot read at the field. He cannot throw the ball. You look at it, and he got a pass wide open 10 yards over the field, and he can't hit a guy on a simple route wide open in the middle of the field.
He
So,
can't hit
yeah,
the broadside of the barn sometimes, Justin. And
terrible.
I don't mean derogatory or nothing, but like that's literally what it is. He can't hit the broadside of the barn. The Kentucky game when he was at Florida, oh my gosh, he had a receiver wide open 20 yards down the field, and he threw a pick six. And I'm
Yes.
like, how do you do that? Like,
And
how do
and let
you throw that bad? Go ahead, go ahead.
no, and I don't think you're being rude at all. I think that's just part of breaking down football and breaking down his play. It's been terrible. And so it's one of those things like he can run, but speedy defenses, man, you got to have the ability to throw. But one of the biggest things too that I think that showed me that really showed me that Richardson is not the guy besides his play. They were down on the last drive of the game against Houston with a chance to win the game.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was to win the game or tie. I cannot remember. Driving down the field, and he's running around trying to make a play on first and second down, and third
I
down.
remember this now.
He took himself out of the game on third down because he needed a breather. What winning
Yes.
quarterback will pull themselves out of a game on a crucial third down because they're tired? That to
Yeah.
me was just some unbelievable. Like they were assuming that he got hurt or something like that, but it didn't look like it on the sideline. He was just kind of like, he was like smiling. And turns out he admitted he came out for a breather. I can't make sense of that.
I know. And another thing too is like before we give our prediction is like, listen, like I want Anthony Richards to succeed. I like the guy. Like he's got a great personality, but it's just like, dude, you are playing your division rival. This and at the time, I don't think the Colts were out of the division just quite yet. I don't think.
No. Mm-mm.
And you have a chance to steal a division game on the road in Houston, and you're like, oh, I need a breather. No, that's not what you do. You like
It's
most
insane.
coaches would shake their head and just be like, why?
Yes.
It doesn't make any sense. But
Not at all. That was a 23-20 final, absolutely insane.
but as far as this game goes, I do think the Texans do win and
Yes.
get to 9-3. I do think they win, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is a letdown moment or a look ahead. But
Yeah.
I got the Texans winning.
Here's my only chance for the Colts, and this is why they could be feisty in this game, besides the fact that they're a division rival and they always play us tough. Again, I just think they're all over the place and consistent. However, the duo that they have in the backfield, if they can get that going, they have a puncher's chance, because that will be hard to stop with Richardson if they kind of get into a flow running the ball with them too. It'd be hard. It'd be very hard to do against this defense, but I think our defense is fast enough, has that kind of tenacity again that they play with, and I think we'll win this in a close game. But I would not be surprised if it does, potentially go the other direction.
Week 14, Sunday, December 7th at the Kansas City Chiefs, 8:20 NBC on Sunday Night Football. So the whole world's going to be watching. No pressure. But this is it right here. This is it for the Texans. You want to talk about being Super Bowl contenders. This is the game right here. You go to Arrowhead and beat the team that has won the AFC so many times. Here's your chance. The moment's right in front of you right now. What are you going to do with it? What do you think, Justin?
The only reason I would ever pick against the Texans in this game is because of the officiating and how terrible. And not just me saying that was the storyline of that Kansas City game. On top of what I gave you numbers wise earlier, where CJ Stroud was pressured on 51% of the plays there. And then also the Texans had a couple of O-line injuries. We're down 2 wide receivers. Jalen Petrie was out, and they were on their second game in 5 days in Arrowhead, and they lost. Kansas City got that second score late, and I think Kansas City just ultimately put a garbage time score on the board. But that game was close throughout. CJ Stroud outplayed Patrick Mahomes in that game number-wise, even though he got pressured 51% of the time, and the officiating still was a big part of it. That fake hit on Mahomes that kept a drive going, the roughing the passer that would have given us the ball and then punting it deep in their territory, and that would have given us the momentum. After they called that fake roughing the passer that was hugely controversial, that gave them the momentum back, because Houston had to stop there, and they had stopped them on, I think, their first 3 drives, and that would have been the 3rd stop in a row. And so I think the Texans win this game. The Texans are the better team. I just don't think the Chiefs, I don't think they're as good as people think. I don't. They rely so, Mahomes did not have a great season statistically last season. Their defense is very good, and they kept him in games. They bailed him out a lot, and so does the officiating. But I think the Texans win this game.
And Justin, what I want to point out is if this prediction holds true, if you all do go ahead and win this game, the Texans will make national headlines. The media will be talking about you guys all week as potential favorites to win the whole thing. Because as we know, Kansas City is always the perennial favorites, no matter what preseason polls you look at or Vegas odds, MGMs, whatever you want to look at. If the Texans go to Arrowhead and win late in the year, a lot of people will put respect on this Texans team and take them serious. Not that they didn't
And
before, but this
exactly,
will really make them serious. Like, they'll be like,
100%.
oh, shoot, D'Amico Ryans and CJ Stroud are here to play. They're not, this is no longer, haha, you're the Texans. This is
Yeah.
legit.
And another thing, it was after Tank Dell went down because, again, the Texans were dominating offensively and play them. And then Tank Dell got injured. And that really kind of also really put, I feel like that when that happened, it took all of, or in Houston, it took all of kind of the air out of the team because how do you see your guy go down like that and, try to come back on the field after that big break? And I think that really just took all of what they had in the tank out of them completely. So, because Tank Dell had 98 yards up until that point. Like,
Yeah.
it was a complete domination by Tank Dell up until that point. So he had 7 targets, 6 receptions for 98 yards and a touchdown. And Texans lost that game 27-19.
Yeah. I have this as a loss, though, Justin. I just, it's hard for me to pick against Kansas City and Arrowhead. And for all the mentions and points that you mentioned.
That game was in Arrowhead last year.
Yes. And Patrick Mahomes, I think by all metrics, all accomplishments, I think we would both agree, Justin, being knowledgeable football guys, Mahomes is the best quarterback going to date. I don't think you disagree with me on that.
I do. I completely disagree.
Okay. Well,
completely.
It's not CJ Stroud, then it's Dak Prescott.
No, it's not CJ Stroud. It's not CJ Stroud either. I put, as far as quarterbacks go, I put Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson both over him.
Okay. That's interesting. Normally
he's got a better team. He's got a better team around him, and I just don't think he does as much as the other two to put the team on their back. He had a down season last year. He's shown that, like, whenever, they won a lot of close games last year, and whenever they've kind of gotten to, a point where they were injured at the receiver room and stuff like that, like, I feel like Mahomes has clearly struggled, and Kelsey is the kind of the guy that he really looks to. But outside of Kelsey, it's really tough for him, I feel like, in a lot of cases. 26 touchdowns and 11 interceptions last season, a 67.6 QBR. And he didn't lead the league in passing yards. He was, like, I think 8th or something in the league in passing yards. So, yeah, I don't think I think Josh Allen and Lamar are better quarterbacks. If you put Josh Allen or Lamar on that Kansas City team, I think they're better.
Okay. You heard it here first, everybody. I mean, we're breaking new ground here. Don't let the Kansas City fans hear you say that, Justin. They
can. It's all right. Engagements are engagements. Whether they're positive or negative, YouTube doesn't care. So go ahead, leave your comments.
But I have them losing and falling to 9-4. But Week 15, Sunday, December 14th, versus the Arizona Cardinals, 1 p.m. on Fox. This is an interesting game because Arizona, Marvin Harrison Jr., Kyler Murray, they seem to be building something over there, kind of like what the Texans were. Two similar teams, two young quarterbacks. Kyler a little bit more up there, more experienced than CJ, but still on the younger side of things. They're building a good defense over there with Shane Gannon. Or Jonathan Gannon, excuse me, not Shane. I don't know why I said Shane. Jonathan Gannon. This could be a fun game in Houston. I think, especially if they do beat the Chiefs, this could be another letdown game. I know it may sound like a broken record right now, but there's a lot of potential for that in the way they line his schedule up. But 100%. What say you, Justin?
Yeah, I think while they do have a good kind of young wide receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr., bulked up this offseason, clearly he's going to be excellent. I'm not really sold on Kyler Murray still. I don't know how anybody can be. And I think he moves around a little too much in the pocket. I think the Texans defense will make him pay for that, because I think Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson will be able to keep him contained to the pocket coming off the edges. And I think that's going to put a lot of stress on him. And then you got Marvin Harrison trying to deal with this kind of defensive backfield. It's going to be tough for them. So I think that's a win for Houston.
I do too. I think the Texans, especially the way I have it coming off a loss, I think they'll be angry. I think they'll be a little upset. And I got them at 10-4. I think they'll win this game. The Cardinals give a valiant effort, defense, but I think Texans will be too much. Week 16, Sunday, December 21st, versus the Las Vegas Raiders, 4:25 on CBS. And this is another one of them. Pete Carroll's coming back to town. He's found a job in Vegas. They traded for Geno Smith. They drafted Ashton Genty, Max Crosby. They lost Nate Hobbs on the back end, though. That's definitely a big missing piece in the secondary for this Raiders team. But how do you see this game going, Justin?
I don't think the Raiders are going to be a very good team this coming season.
Okay.
And so I think, they're going to have to, of course, build. I think, they've got a, better quarterback situation, but they're going to have to still build that team up a little bit more to get them up to where they need to be. So I think this is a game Houston wins, especially at this point in the season. They got momentum. I think this is a game that they come in and they kind of set a statement that they're for real. I mean, like a final statement that they're for real by beating a team that they should pretty handily.
I do too. I got Texans winning, thus putting them at 11-4 on the season. Week 17, to be determined flex game at the Los Angeles Chargers, time to be determined. And this is a game I'm looking forward to because it's a rematch of the wild card game last year and in Houston. This time they're going to LA, going south side. I think, Justin, this is a revenge game of sorts, in my opinion. I think the Chargers took offense to the way they were treated in that game, meaning the way they were punched around by the defense. The Harbaugh brothers, they do not like that. They do not take kindly to teams that do that to them, and it's shown. Like Michigan, like Jim at Michigan, he did not take too kindly to when teams did that to his team. And I feel like this is one of them. They remember what y'all did to them, and I think this could be trouble because you're coming to their yard now. What do you think?
I do think so. I think it's going to be a combination of factors here for Houston. Los Angeles, like you said, they want that back, right? But I think Los Angeles is going to come up fired up for that game, potentially be playing with something on the line, not 100% sure, but they're going to be coming in fired up in that game as revenge. And I think the Texans at the record that I have them, but regardless, I think at this point in the season, they're going to have the division wrapped up. So I don't think the Texans are going to be as like, we got to win this game, or anything like that. I think they're starting to kind of, get the ball rolling, kind of taking a little bit of some guys out, maybe not resting, a lot of them, but rotating a lot of guys. And so I think Los Angeles is going to ultimately win this game because I just think, again, they're going to be fired up for it. And I think the Texans are going to be worried about the playoffs, not necessarily beating the Chargers. Of course, they want to win the game naturally, but I think it's going to be the start of that preparation to get them kind of ready and rested.
I do too. I have this as a loss too. I think they took last year personal. I think the Chargers did, and I think they remember it. I'm very much sure of it. So I got Texans at 11-5. But week 18, time to be determined flex game versus the Indianapolis Colts, TBD. So it could be the Saturday game, could be an early window game, could be the late afternoon, or it could be the Sunday night game. If the Texans have seating on the line, they sometimes have done that in the past where they'll put, even though the Colts could be completely out of the race, they could put the game on Sunday night just for viewing interest. Could happen. But as far as this goes, it could get interesting depending on where everyone sits. What say you, Justin?
So the Texans, again, will kind of be in that mode where I think they're going to be resting a lot of guys for this game. And Indy might have a wild card slot on the line in this game. So again, they might have something to play for in that week 18 game.
Absolutely.
Their division opponent, and they do play us tough. Like in years they're down and all that. Like last year, again, that game was 23-20. So they do play us tough and they play us close. And so I predict this one as a loss. I have the Texans finishing 12-5. because I think these last two they drop, mainly because those two teams, again, they're going to be playing for something. And I think the Texans are going to be at that point where they're kind of set in the division, and they're not really they're making sure that they be safe with guys and careful with guys and kind of taking some out.
I have the Texans winning this game at home and going to 12-5. So we both have 12-5 as the end result, just different ways
Yep.
of getting there.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think they beat the Colts at home. I do think Indy could be playing for a wild card spot. It's very much possible. They've got a good roster. And the AFC, even though it is loaded, I do think Indy does have a chance if their quarterback play is on par. But I do have the Texans winning. Now, we're both predicting 12-5, but let me ask you, Justin, what's the floor for this team? Like, what's the worst they could do in your opinion?
I think the floor, looking at kind of this schedule, let me take a peek at it. So we come in here. Yeah, I really think kind of the floor of this team is going to be because if you come out and lose to Los Angeles like I predicted, Tampa Bay, again, a tough team there. So 0-2. I think they beat Jacksonville. They beat Tennessee, lose to Baltimore. So that would put them in that stretch coming out with 2-3. Or 2-3. Seattle, on a floor, they lose that game. I still think they beat San Francisco at home. So I'd put them at 4-5, 4-6, something like that. Denver loss. You got Jacksonville a win, so that's going to be 5 wins. Tennessee, we'll say they split that. So put that at 6 wins. Buffalo lose. Indy, what am I at? 6 wins. Indy win 7. Kansas City lose. Arizona win 8. Las Vegas win 9. Lose to Los Angeles and Indy. So what is that? 9-7? 9-8?
9-8.
Yeah.
My floor is 10-7. I think 10-7.
I think that's more likely, but floor is just if everything because catastrophic, for sure. So, but 10,
I think even if the bottom fell out, I still think they have enough talent. I think they would still find a way to get 10 wins. I think we're at this point with the Texans that they're a 10-win team almost guaranteed every year, almost.
Yeah, they would have to lose Stroud for that.
Yes, and they've earned my trust again, where I could begin to believe, okay, they're 10 wins. Let's not even think about it.
Absolutely.
That's my floor. Ceiling, we both predicted 12-5. I think their ceiling's 13-4, in my opinion. I think if you flip a couple results, like I could see them going to Arrowhead and beating Kansas City. It's not impossible. I could see them beating the Chargers. I could see them beating the Ravens. There's a couple games where you flip-flop and they're 13-4 instead of 12-5. That's my ceiling. What about yours, Justin?
I'd say 14-2, with the 2 losses being to Baltimore and Buffalo.
Okay.
And of course, those could flip, a few different ways, but I would say the ceiling's at 14-2 if they win the games that they should and lose the games that they're probably going to be predicted to lose.
So the last thing I want to talk about before we skedaddle is talking about the overall landscape of the AFC. Where do we see the Texans? Is this the year the Texans could make some noise? Are the Texans up in those tiers with the Ravens and Bills and Chiefs? Are they the tier 2? How do you see them in this landscape, Justin?
Well, I think naturally, putting the proven teams at the tier 1, come in the season, you have to do that. But I do think the Texans fall into that second tier because it's kind of still more of a earn it to get to that top tier, perform in the playoffs, try to go in, healthy. And again, they got some young pieces, young rookies on offense, and then, on defense, making sure that defense continues to play at the level they did last year, which I have no doubt they will. I think they'll work their way up there, but I don't think they're going to get that respect until they come out and they beat a Baltimore,
Mhm.
a Kansas City, a Buffalo, or a combination of those two. So I think they will, or if they just, make it to the playoffs and then prove it there. But I do think they're going to put a lot of people on notice this
Mhm.
year. They are going to be championship contenders, and I think they are legitimately AFC championship material. Right now, I'll probably say I project them to potentially get to the AFC championship at their ceiling.
Mhm.
And actually, a ceiling, I think they could go on a run. But I
Mhm.
would say probably optimistic. They get to that AFC South, or they get to that AFC championship game.
Mhm. I would say for me, and feel free to disagree, I think they're a tier 2 team. I think they have
Mhm.
proven that at their best they can make some noise. I feel like if they're healthy and we have an even playing field, no shenanigans, I feel like they're a tier 2 team. They're not quite at the level of the big guys just yet, but they're tier 2. They're in that tier with the Chargers and maybe the Broncos, that kind of tier. Um, and they could, like you said, work their way up to tier 1 if they beat 2 out of the 3 big dogs that are on their schedule, in which they've got a great chance to do that, which is good about it is a lot of times you'll miss these teams, and it sometimes does put an asterisk on, okay, how good are you really? You only
Yeah.
played the Bills. Like, how much can we really put in stock of you? But they
Mhm.
get to play all 3, and if they win 2 out of 3, I think the questions will no longer be, "Can the Texans compete? Are the Texans good enough to apply in the postseason?"
Yeah.
In my
I,
opinion.
and I think those games are spread far out enough to give them a chance. Last year, having Miami, Kansas City, and Baltimore back to back to back in a span of 11 days in December, December
Mhm,
25th, and then December 31st for Kansas City and Baltimore at Kansas City, Baltimore. Um, that them being more spread out this year gives them a much better opportunity.
mhm, and I do think too, as far as the landscape goes, I think the AFC right now, I think it's between 5 teams. I think it's the Bengals, I think it's the Texans, I think it's the Bills, it's the Chiefs, and it's the Ravens. Those are my 5 currently that
I
I would
agree.
pick to go to the Super Bowl out of the AFC.
I agree.
I and and another thing is too, Justin, is I wanna ask you this, I just thought of this,
Did you put
but
the
who would
Texans in there? Hold on. Did you put the Texans in there?
yes, I
Okay,
put
cool,
the
cool.
Bengals, Texans, Bills, Ravens, Chiefs. Those would be
Okay.
my 5,
Yeah, I agree.
and you can order them any way you want.
Yeah.
Like, if you wanna put the Texans 3rd, go for it, knock yourself loopy. But
Can't yet. Can't yet.
but thi just thought of this, and this will be a good way to end it. Who would be the Texans' MVPs for this year for offense and defense?
Um, Offensively, if we're talking about just on um who I think not is going to be like who I just think numbers would be able to go up from numbers wise. Of course, MVP is a quarterback award. So I have to
Mhm,
put like Stroud there. It's become a quarterback award. However, I think we're going to look back at Nico Collins year this year and really kind of people are going to start putting him in that top 3 conversation. I think he's going to
mhm,
be a lot more opened up this year. Yeah, I think he is going to be unbelievable this year. And so I'll put Nico Collins as probably our offensive team MVP. Of course, you could put Stroud there or quarterback there all day, but
mhm,
I think Nico is going to be that guy for this offense.
mhm. I would agree. I would say Stroud, obviously, because the quarterback has the ball the most. I think, obviously, like you said, Nico, and I could see a world where Joe Mixon could win it as well, especially if the Texans get right on the O-line. And because Joe Mixon, as we've said, have had some breakout performances in Cincinnati. Like, when he got paid originally, he got paid top 5 money. Like, he has the potential to do that, but he is
Yeah.
on the older side, so it's unlikely that he would be the MVP
He
for the
had
Texans.
he
But
had probably, in my opinion, his best season last year. Like we said, he just
mhm,
got wore down. And so having Nick Chubb back there, I don't think he'll have enough touches to get there. With that backfield being split, him coming off of a foot injury. But If he's fully healthy and Nick Chubb just opens him up a little more, he could put up some insane numbers and be in that conversation.
Mm-hmm. And then the defensive MVP for this team, I I think it's a three-team horse race. I think it's Stingley, it's Hunter, and I think it's Anderson. Would be the three choices for me. And I would personally give it to Stingley. I think he's going to be the one, as great as the other two are, don't get me wrong. I think Stingley is the one that drives the engine to this defense because his energy is infectious. He takes on the best and he fears nobody. Like the dude doesn't care. He doesn't care if you're a Hall of Famer or if you're a rookie. He's going to take you on. And I think for me, he's going to be the MVP of the Texans defense. What do you think,
Yeah.
Justin?
I think, cornerbacks who are lockdown cornerbacks don't always put up the best numbers because they're not targeted as much. But I think that lends to why he would be the likely MVP. Just being that lockdown. But again, I have the same three, Daniil Hunter, Will Anderson. Either one of those guys could win it. I would not be surprised if it was Will Anderson, who kind of comes away as that defensive MVP because again, what he played in 13 games last season and had 10 sacks, 6.5 less than Daniil Hunter,
He was
unbelievable, unreal. And he's getting better.
And the thing too is when you look at this, it's crazy, but I could see a world where, and this will kind of, I guess, get it stirring. I could see a world where Will Anderson or Derek Stingley could be an MVP conversation one year, kind of like J.J. Watt was. I don't know if that's crazy of me to think, Justin, or if I'm too high on these players, but I see that potential in them. They could have a year like a J.J. Watt did, where they finished second in MVP voting.
I think it's possible if they ever allow a defensive player to be in that conversation again. It's just, like I said, it's become a quarterback award completely.
Which like, that's the thing too, not to go down a rabbit hole here, but it's just like Will Anderson and Stingley to me are just like two guys, if they ever put that conversation back out there, they would be at the top of the list for me. Like you said, like if you watch how those guys play, they play some great football, fundamentally sound. If you're a coach, show the film of those two. Like, I really think that, and Stingley, like, man, like you said, what a stud. I think he's not getting enough love in these conversations of being one of the top three corners in the league. I think he really could have an argument, especially if he has a breakout year like we hope he does.
No, he's already broken out. Like Derek Stingley, just real quick, like pulling up his numbers, real quick, just to kind of give an
show this man
idea.
some love. He deserves it.
Yeah, so he all 17 games, he recorded 5 interceptions, 18 pass defendeds, 54 total tackles, and that's as a guy who's not getting targeted much. Again, that game winning interception, one-on-one on Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill streaking out the sideline, took it from him, got the interception. All first team, all pro first team, and got paid the highest paid cornerback money in the league. So, he's an unbelievable lockdown quarterback. And against Jacksonville last year, he had an interception, 3 passes defended, and they had a 0 passing rating against him. He's been unbelievable. And you see him in that Chargers game as well.
It's unbelievable what these guys are doing.
Yep.
It's unbelievable what they're doing. And here's the thing too, Justin. I hope he's a Texan for life. You all found somebody that wants to be there and loves to be there. I ain't never heard no one talk about Houston like Stingley has. Like any interview he does, any media, he talks glowingly about you guys. So I think you got a keeper.
D'Amico Ryan's definitely a player's coach, and these guys love to play for him, so they're having a good time.
But with all that being said, this was fun as always, talking about the 2025 Houston Texans. Of course, with the man himself, Justin Adams. I appreciate his time as always, and we'll look forward to having him on some other time. You never know. But Justin, for people that may not know who you are, this is your chance. What do you do besides watch the Houston Texans? What are some other things you do? Take it
Yeah,
away.
so I consider myself a jack of all trades, master of none. I'm a huge diehard Husker fan. So Texans and Huskers are and Astros are kind of like my three main teams.
Mhm.
And I cover Nebraska football over on Nebraska Football at The Voice College Football. And I'm a personal trainer also and a boxing coach. I turned professional. Probably had my first professional bout in either October or November. We're trying to line up a date for that. And play the piano. I've been singing my entire life. And so, like I said, I was in the military for 5 years. I did bodybuilding previously, nationally qualified in that, competed nationally in that. So, 34 years old, I've tried to dabble in a number of things and become fairly good at it. So I just try to keep a good, set of hobbies that keep me doing something healthy, keep me active, keep me going. And just, I like taking on new challenges,
Mm-hmm.
So.
And you mentioned Nebraska, the voice of college football, which I will put all of Justin's links down at the bottom, his Twitters, his Instagram, and go check out Nebraska, the voice of college football. I know this is a NFL show, but if you are a college fan too, go check out Justin and Brian on Thursday night when they have their call-in show. It's always fun to watch those guys, and Justin does an amazing job along with Brian, even though Brian's a Chiefs fan, but we'll let that slide for now. We'll let that slide.
Yeah, I let it
Justin, I can put
slide
up
by
with.
bringing
I
him.
like him.
I almost didn't bring him on the channel because it was just me on the channel for a long time, and I was just trying to find the right person to bring on. And he was just excellent at what he did. Had a radio background, so. But yeah, but it's a good time on there. It is a good time on there. But unfortunately, he is a Chiefs fan, so we got to deal with that.
But like I said though, always a fun time over there, and I look forward to watching Justin on Thursday nights on Nebraska the Voice College Football. All of his links will be down in the bottom here, so go check him out. Go show him some love. Tell him anything you want. If you're an Iowa fan, tell him that they suck. He'll love it. But
Yeah.
in all seriousness though, I thank you as always for joining me, Justin, and for everyone watching. This has been the 2025 Houston Texans season preview and predictions. And thank you all for being here. And go Cards, everybody.